Um, I am a college student attending Haskell Indian Nations University, and I am just really excited to be here. It's going to be a really rough week leading up to our national conference in a few days. But other than that, I think today's discussion will help us build together and get prepared for whatever's ready to be talked about at the nationals. So thank you for introducing me, and I want to say thank you all for joining one more time and passing the mic on to Rory.
Thank you, Lauren and Sunwine. I hope everyone's doing well and staying safe. My name is Rory Wheeler. I'm a citizen of the Seneca Nation of Indians here in Western New York, also descendant of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation. I'm excited to be joining you all today for today's panel. A little bit about me. A month ago, I graduated from Niagara University with my bachelor's in political science, minor in pre-law. So I'm in the midst of studying for the law school admissions test, among other things, and keeping up with other responsibilities I have. But I'm really happy to be here today to share a little bit about my story and how I was able to bounce back from things that have happened for me growing up here in my nation's Cattaraugus territory, working primarily in volunteering in public safety and government affairs in my nation, and to now being a college graduate and moving on to the next phase of whatever that might be I'm supposed to do. But looking forward to joining Unity as we're all getting back together for our National Unity Conference next week in Dallas. So with that, thank you, and we'll see many of you in Dallas.
Thank you. Audrey, Josiah, Jay, and Shanoa, would you like to introduce yourselves briefly and how you're connected to Unity?
All right. Hello, my name is Audrey Mitchell. I am Navajo and Cheyenne from the Colorado River Indian tribes, and I have been involved with Unity since 2014 with my youth council here in Mesa, Arizona. And I've been able to take on different roles with Unity under their 25 under 25 program, their peer leaders program, and now part of the EC. And so I'm very glad to be here and have everybody come to our webinars that we've been having for these past couple months. I appreciate everybody that's been coming on, all of our peer guides that have been taking charge. And like everybody else, I can't wait to see everybody in Dallas. And for those who can't make it in person, I hope that you can join us virtually for our Unity Conference as well.
Hello, my name is Josiah Lester. I've been involved with Unity since 2015. My first conference was back in Washington, D.C., and that was all due to the Phoenix Indian Center, of course. As me and Jay, both volunteers there, youth program, and it really took us far into Unity. So I don't know much more to say. Audrey wrapped it up pretty nice, and I would just say join clubs, join as many clubs as you can to get yourself involved.
Absolutely. How about you, Jay?
So I'd say a bit of both. Hi, my name is Jay, and I was definitely fortunate to be a part of Final, which was just the Phoenix Indian Center for a while. And then afterwards it was Mesa Strength Youth Council. And yeah, DC was the first one. It was great. It's been a great 7 years. Yeah.
And last but certainly not least, we have Regional Representative Shanoa.
Hi everyone, my name is Shanoa, and like Lauren Ashley said, I am Southwest Regional Rep this year, and I'm so excited for next week and just all the great things to come out of that conference. And so, yeah, hope to see you all there.
Awesome. So we're going to kick off this conversation with a little information about what it means to be impacted by trauma, whether you know it or not. In Indian country, Native youth experience trauma at higher rates than other youth. And in one study, it actually showed that Native youth experience trauma at the same rates as a combat veteran returning from war. And this can be in many different ways. It can be dysfunction in the home, dysfunction in the family, dysfunction in the community. So today, Sunway and Roy will share a little bit about some of the things they've seen in the community. But ultimately, today is a conversation on resilience and how our cultural teachings can really help us overcome any obstacle that our Native youth may face. And it just shows how amazing Native youth are, that they're able to go through all these things and still come out as amazing leaders. I think the main goal of the Healing Indigenous Lives initiative was to really let people know that, you know, hey, whether you're coming fresh out of a detention center, or you're involved in your local youth council, or maybe you've been in a diversion program, you all are leaders, and everyone's a leader no matter what they've been through. So I'm really excited to turn it over to our youth so that they can share a little bit more about their experiences and what they've been through. As well as, you know, how can we gain strategies for identifying trauma experiences and seeing like what we can do to turn that risk factor into a protective factor. I always like to start off with a couple of basic understandings when we talk about trauma. Number one, none of us are trained professionals in mental health, but all of our experiences that we share today are from the heart and lived life experience. And so I would encourage your youth in your community to go ahead and you know, if they have something to share, let them, because we want this to be you can host your own community conversations, and you can do that by reaching out to youth, and everybody has something to teach each other. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sunway. If you can go ahead and get us started while I pull these slides up.
Thank you for that, Lauren Ashley. Like you mentioned before, none of us are trained professionals, but all of us have lived through some similar situations to where we can share our experiences in a healthy conversation. You know, throughout this webinar objective, we just kind of really want to be able to share our stories, empower others, look for identifying strategies, and just kind of like go through the motions of exploring new options. We're here to share our resources, we're here to share our stories, and we're here to help heal in ways that listening will help. You know, all of this stuff doesn't require a solution, it just requires understanding. And in the situations where people are free to talk about their traumatic experiences, their situations without judgment, that's the place where healing starts. And I think where we can transition forward is to just really act with empathy, you know, act with sympathy. We got to be able to put ourselves in different perspectives and other people's shoes in order to truly understand, because we're not here to find a solution. We're not here to solve everybody's problems. We're only here to help understand. And with that being said, I think we can move on to the next slide and listen to what Rory has to say on his next. Hi
everyone, Rory again here. I want to apologize. You can't see me. I had an engagement that ran over by a lot, so I'm trying to be in, as usual, probably try to be in 5 places at once, but nonetheless, excited to dive deep into today's webinar. So for me, a little bit more about my background. I grew up on our Seneca Nation until I was like 5, and then moved off the territory at that age until I graduated, until I started just about the end of middle school or so. As we know, this was during a time before my nation really got off their feet and started diving into taking advantage of economic opportunities in our area. So there was a lot of poverty, and with that comes a whole host of issues, whether it's lack of access to language and culture, lack of awareness about it, high rates of drug and alcohol abuse and related high risk incidents, and I could just keep going on and on. These were days where I think that my nation had to sometimes choose between paying the light bill or payroll for that week. Just troubling economic times and for the nation, but and it resulted into a lot of loss of community connection and care in my community. So with that, my family made the decision to maybe it's not the best place for me. So I left when I was 5. Was very deeply involved with our language and our culture, trying to immerse so much of what was around me. My family's homestead where generations were raised, and then that connection to relatives and different things. So I moved off 6 until 12 or so. Lived in a very affluent type area, predominantly, if not exclusively, white. And so that's the area I lived in. And then as I was approaching my teenage years, I had a longing that I wanted to be back home. I wanted to be back serving my community in some sort of way. My grandparents were great pillars in the Seneca Nation, just very involved with different community organizations and really and dedicated their lives to giving back to our nation, its people, not only here but nationwide. My grandmother was served in the served various tribal hospitals in her career. My grandfather was involved in the United States Air Force, and then just brought that same type of care back to our people. So I wanted to do that, and so I came back home and got involved with public safety and emergency services. Still don't know how that happened. It's just one of the things that just happens. Also, plus our local volunteer fire department was directly right across the street from our house on the main strip on our territory. And so, now I'm still serving in that role and, still serving when I can here and there. But what I've been able to be involved with the last 11 years has really changed my outlook on the world, and how it's really changed my life, and also helped me be a more understanding, more empathetic, more aware type person by some of the experiences I've been through. So I was at the fire department, and then I got involved with our government affairs with the Seneca Nation. Served there until I was served in those roles. So I was like 15 up until I was like 21 or so. An election happened, so then that kind of cut short. And then I had a choice to go back to school, and I just graduated last week. And we'll just say it was quite the windy path to get there. If I was, I'm 23 right now. I'll be 24 later this year. If I was 17, 18 when I graduated high school, you told me, where I'd be, I would tell you you're insane. So a lot of my experiences, serving in the community really shaped my, as I said, my outlook, and being involved with the fire department and being a first responder to many tragedies on our territory. Like I said, late 90s, early 2000s was a really turbulent time in my nation. There's a lot of division. One where even our people literally killed each other over disagreements over politics and the right and those for and against gambling, and there was a whole swath of issues. So it was a really dark time in my nation. A lot of that trauma is still felt through our people today. And for me, growing up as heavily involved in the community, being being well anchored, I used to say that, people in the community just asked me for my phone number, and they said, "Oh, I already got it. It's 911." About any incident that happened on the territory. And I started that when I was 18 and still do it today. And I'm maybe not as much involved, but still there. So coming out of the opioid.
Well, sounds like you just cut off, Rory.
Right when I was getting to a good part.
Honestly.
I know. I was like, what happened after the opioid crisis? We need to know.
I guess I can pull off some dead air right now and help share my story and how I got involved with this peer guide thing. I didn't get involved with Unity until 2016. Oklahoma City was my first conference, and I remember at that conference, it was the year of 25 under 25 recipients, and I remember seeing people up on the stage, and I just remember thinking to myself, someday that's going to be me. Like, I've always had this type of vision for myself and being an outspoken person, just because as I was raised as a young girl, that's what I was always praised for. I was praised for being outspoken. I was praised for being resilient. I was praised for being a little character and a leader that's going to help my people one day. And at such a young age, that sort of expectation kind of put a lot of pressure on me. And so the pressure of me living up to others' expectations gave me a lot of troubles with social anxiety, and it gave me a lot of troubles with depressive episodes, because in my youth, I was in the foster care system, and I have experienced witnessing domestic violence situations in my household between my parents, and alcoholism is a running factor. Depression is a running factor. There's a lot of mental illnesses that surrounded me as a young girl, and unknowingly, I picked up a lot of traits. I picked up a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms, and they didn't start hitting me until I left home for the first time. I left home to go attend high school at a boys' school 2 hours away from where I grew up. And the first time I'm off the leash, going off to school, I'm away from and what I was smoking, who could see me and hold me accountable for what I was. And in high school, I wasn't royalty no more. I was Little Miss Wallapai, and I was Miss Teen Wallapai as a young girl in my community. And being off the leash, being away from a platform really helps me be confident in going out and being a party social. So that's where I started figuring out the unhealthy coping mechanisms. Like, I noticed myself trying to numb some pain by seducing it with alcohol, or trying to run away from by getting high or stoned and sneaking off and ditching school with my friends. And that's when I noticed where I would get super, super depressed. And it got to the point to where I was in self-harming myself. I would cut my wrist, and I would be really, really persuasive in convincing myself that I didn't deserve to live, that it wasn't for me, that life was just an endless cycle of pain. And so I have run into situations to where I found myself attempting to commit and found myself really under the pressures of wanting to hang myself and just end it all. And that was from when I was 14 to 15, and I got kicked out of boarding school. I wasn't allowed to go back for my sophomore year, so I had to find a new place to go to school. I had to find a new
So as someone was speaking, you know, we've all been through something, and I think we carry a lot of things with us. Um, Senwai, would you like to finish what you were saying?
Where did I cut off?
Boarding school.
Oh, okay. Really, the gist of that is I got kicked out and I couldn't go back to school. So I was mad at the world attending a new school closer to home. And because I was closer to home, I was more involved with like community, and people from my childhood were reaching out to me to be back in a leadership position. So I got involved with youth council, and youth council introduced me to unity. And at the 25 under 25 award ceremony, where I thought to myself, that's going to be me. I remember hearing somebody talk on the stage about their struggles with depression and their struggles with overcoming and being resilient in stressful situations. And so I just started to see things from a new perspective and kind of approach things with more empathy and approach things in a manner where I didn't have to understand anything. I just had to go with the flow. And it's something that my grandma always said to me, you know, things happen for a reason. And that's just as true as it may seem, it's really not what you want to hear. So that's just kind of like how I got into the situation. And if Rory wants to go back to his slide, we can let that happen.
Thank you for sharing. I do want to acknowledge it is a lot. It takes a lot for Native youth to stand up and share what they've gone through without judgment, and for it to turn into a testimony of like your strength. That's where, you know, we all want to encourage youth to go from a place of pain to a place of strength, and letting them know that, like you said, you went from these struggles to being a leader in unity, and everyone is able to do that no matter where they are or what they've gone through. Rory, are you back with us?
I am, yeah. I apologize. Where I live isn't, you know, so much electric, you know, like the GE Tower and the Empire State Building. It's more of roosters, horses, and cows. But so that's the internet here for you to give you a little glimpse. But I'm just going to go back to what I was just going to try to speed it up a little bit. So as I said, I was carrying a lot of weight in the community, doing a lot, not doing really anything for myself, not sleeping very well. I think I used to do about 3 hours of sleep because I was working full time for the Seneca Nation. You know, volunteering literally night and day, and then plus my volunteer experiences were heavily involved in really heavy stuff, battling the opioid crisis, a lot of domestic violence issues, substance abuse issues, alcohol-related injuries, death, you name it. I've probably seen it. I was there for it. All at the age of about 18 as well. But I knew I had an obligation to continue on because these are, you know, we need people from our own communities doing this work. I had a talk on cultural competency one time, and you know, we have these people that come on our territory sometimes.
That's the chicken. The chicken.
You know, they're not really confident about our culture, and I would say, well, I know I had a duty to emergency medical services. And with that, yeah, carried a lot of heavy stuff. Didn't want to really do it anymore. And I was only doing it for about 6 months. So a lot of that came in or about a year or so, about a year, yeah. Had all these terrible experiences. I wanted to kind of give up. I know one experience really tested me, really, really got me to a really dark place. That, and I started resorting to a lot of, but there's something that got me out of it. It was learning about these 3 Ps that are personalization, pervasiveness, and permanence. Out of a study by an individual named psychologist Martin Seigelsman. I always butcher his name, so I'm sorry for the researchers and scholars that might be listening. But to summarize it, it takes you to get out of your own situation sometimes. Sometimes it's just going to be you. But we, as Indigenous people, and our ancestors and those that came after us, those made so many sacrifices for all of us to be here. And it's our duty to continue on, no matter the cost, and no matter sometimes gotta do what we have to do to continue on. And so I learned about these 3 Ps that have been found to be keys to way how we get back from setbacks and continue on. So the first one was personalization. This is the feeling that we're at fault, really, as we should always do. But not everything happens to us. Not everything happens to us because of us. And we should not take things personally. We must realize what happened, look at the circumstances around it, and how we can move on. I actually came back on this a few weeks ago after having a close friend and a relative passed away under tragic circumstances. That I called it it was a feeling that, what could I have done, but looking at it, I couldn't have done anything. And realizing that not everything that happens to us happens because of us, that if we learn to not take failures personally, it helps us not only to grow, but even to get over it, but also to thrive. Mm-hmm. And the next slide. Next slide.
Yes.
The second P is pervasiveness. It's the feeling that an incident will take over all aspects of our lives. It is okay, better yet, encourage that you take the appropriate amount of time to heal and don't let it define you. During an incident that happened last month, losing a relative, and when I had to learn about these 3Ps. I was in a very cloud of, and you feel like, okay, I'm back again. It's the cow Wi-Fi again, but I just want to say with pervasiveness that with this, that we're judged on not only what we do, but also as we don't do. That this is a time to rethink your methods and plan how you can be successful for the future. That if you take the time to think about things that you are grateful for, then studies show that you live longer and are happier, not focusing so much on the negative. I remember this past December, I was grieving the loss of a friend who passed from COVID-19. And the weeks after, which were around the holidays too, I was not in the mood to do anything besides just sit there and ponder. But I remember the one day I decided to get up and do something different, go outside and shovel, as I probably should have because the snow is like 8 feet tall. But I remember getting back in the house and, continuing on with my normal day-to-day responsibilities. That to get back on your schedule as soon as possible. And creating routines is one of the other ways to get back. And staying busy and keeping your mind energized on things is a way you can help overcome this setback and a failure. And next slide. And the third one, which was kind of the hardest, it still is that is permanence, the feeling that the sorrow will last forever. We're all stronger than we know. We're all descendants of those who made extreme sacrifices for all of us to be here today. We owe it to them, our families, communities, and our future generations not only survive, but to thrive. This one is very hard to do. It kind of goes along with pervasiveness that the feeling will not last forever. That we need to truly make those around us happier, especially even if those that may have passed you, we must continue on. We must continue to thrive. The feeling will not last forever, and that the seeds of resilience are planted in not only how we survive, but also how we thrive. Like I said before, now that it's summertime and I've spent a lot of time at the pool and at the lake, when life sucks you under, you can kick against the bottom, find the surface, and breathe again. That we as Native youth will come from various backgrounds and various different experiences that many of our non-Native peers will never imagine of experiencing. But the seeds of resilience have been planted in us from a very young age. But it's our duty to know that they're there and use them as like a muscle. Like if you don't use it, you'll lose it. You need to exercise and work it like it is like a muscle. And as a reminder, I need to go back to the gym too. But I'm glad I got to share with you briefly this 3 Ps: personalization, pervasiveness, and permanence. It's like the tongue twister on ways that I have learned that we can get through setbacks and difficulties in our lives and come out stronger than we ever know, because we are stronger than we ever know. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this today. And I send it back over to Sunway and Lauren, Ashley.
Thank you so much. We're going to open it up for a couple of questions. I think there's so many beautiful things that you shared with us, and it goes to speaking about, a lot of times when people go through things that you mentioned, you and Sunway, they don't see themselves as a leader, and it may be hard whether community is welcoming or not welcoming towards them, to see yourself as a leader. And I think both of you speak with such passion because you have lived it, there's true grit in somebody who's had lived experiences and gone to the bottom and pushed back up to the surface. And I think that's what really truly hits the core mission of Unity with inspiring hope and changing lives. It is you're able to inspire hope in others because there were times where maybe you didn't have hope. And that's why everyone on the meeting today shares that, where they know what it feels like to at some point in our lives to have gone through something where we may not feel at our best. So the powerful thing is, though, that we're able to identify when we see youth or loved ones or individuals go through different risk factors, that we're able to call upon our protective factors and how do we increase involvement and the positive to outweigh the negative. It's just like on our traditional teachings on the medicine wheel, you have to find that balance in your life. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up some of the risk and protective factors that you can find on online at youth.gov, and they're a really amazing resources here, but they're just general risk and protective factors. And then I'd like to open it up to our panel today on, do any of these, do you see this happening in Native youth around you, and how have they been able to come out of it? And so let's go ahead and dive in. So first and foremost, what is a risk factor and what is a protective factor? A risk factor is anything that increases the probability that a person will suffer harm. And a protective factor is something that decreases the potential for harm. So when we really focus on how we can help empower youth and help community safety, we're talking about the risk of involvement with juvenile justice systems or the risk factors that can be considered for those conditions or variables that are at a higher likelihood. Obviously, nobody determines your future except yourself, but these are just some examples of what we've seen in communities that sometimes can, if people don't help them and if people aren't able to give them proper resources, it ultimately most likely ends in detention centers or some negative consequences. So the first question I have for the group, and you guys can just unmute each other and speak up, and feel free to comment in the chat box below or on Facebook in the comments section. What, as an individual, we'll go through these different levels: individual, family, or clan, our peers, people in the community, and then our school, neighborhood, or even our youth council. So as an individual, we have some risk factors here, and then we also have some protective factors. And how can, if we see youth in our communities who may be, experiencing antisocial behavioral or emotional low behavior inhibitions. So for example, it's hard for them to communicate with others. What are some ways that you've seen have been helpful in the community?
I think I can go ahead and answer that question, Lauren Ashley. Whenever we see people in our community or in our social networks that are really going through it, those people that are acting different or just not themselves anymore, it's intimidating. Not gonna lie, it's really intimidating to be the first person to go up and be like, "How are you doing?" or really check up on people, because in a way, it's just like, I don't know if like it's a trauma response that a lot of natives have picked up from past experiences, but I noticed that we've all tend to turn the other cheek and ignore what's going on, and really try not to get involved because that's not our problem. That's not what we're supposed to do. And really, it's supposed to be in a healthy way where we have to take the first response, the first initiative to say, hey, if I'm in a healthy situation where I notice when somebody's acting different, or if I'm the healthier person who is there to actually identify trauma responses or trauma triggers, then you also have to be responsible to help heal, because without taking action, without actually being able to approach difficult situations, you're doing more harm than good. Like, if you're gonna stand by and watch somebody kill themselves by drinking themselves to death, or if you're gonna stand by and keep your mouth shut when you know that somebody's getting beat by their partner in a household, then you're not helping them at all. You're not saving grace by withholding their humility. I just feel like we all have to understand that the more compliant we are in complicit situations, then that's when we lose ourselves in the moral gray areas of morals and ethics. And just those shared experiences of where we learn not to trust one another because they know what was happening, but they didn't say anything. That's where we tend to do more harm than good, because I felt like that in situations when I was growing up. I felt like that when I was in high school and I was going through that depressive episode of cutting myself and wanting to commit suicide. A lot of people knew what I was doing, but nobody even said anything. The staff and RNs knew when I would cut myself, and they noticed how I would hide my wrists with long sleeve sweaters in back to my room. And that really hurt me because I noticed how they knew where I was hurting, but they didn't want to help me with my hurt. And that has to do with a lot of domestic violence situations too. A lot of people knew I was being bullied, but they just told me to stand up for myself and told me that I needed to be stronger. Whereas what I really wanted back then was somebody to help me find my voice. And I wanted somebody to help coddle me in those situations where they fought for me in a way. And that had some good in its weaknesses, because even though nobody helped me, I eventually learned to help myself, and I found that resilience and being empowered in situations like that really helped me understand the whole trauma of resilience. You know, resilience is both a strength and a weakness in itself. So that's my answer to the first question. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump.
I'm really glad that you pointed out a couple of key points. Number one, help-seeking behaviors. We can encourage people to, and that you expressed yourself, you wish somebody would have offered that help to you, to not be afraid of offering resources and help. But I also really love your point on ending the stigma around silence when it comes to that there is dysfunction in our communities, and it doesn't mean that they're not amazing places and that they're amazing people, but that you know, we do have to address it. So Audrey or Jay or anyone on the line, does anybody else want to share what, when it comes to an individual who may be struggling, what would encourage them to reach out to cultural, you know, what are those protective factors when they're struggling? What can they reach for on an individual level? How about you, Audrey? There you go.
I really like what I really like what Sunway had to say. She brought up a lot of good points. And going off of kind of what she said about people being silent, I do think it's not always, you know, being silent about bullying or, you know, that kind of stuff. It can also be, you know, seeing someone that's by themselves, you know, if you're at a community event or, you know, stuff where people get involved and you see somebody on the side that's not wanting to get involved. I think people always think, oh, someone is going to go over there and help them. Like, it doesn't have to be me because someone's going to do it. But if everybody does keep that mindset, then, you know, like Sunway said, nobody's going to go over and give the help that that person needs. And so I think everybody to try to help in that aspect is so we can try to switch our mindset. Like, oh, I will go over there and help that person because they need it. And, you know, like Sunway said, and I think a lot of us on this panel can also agree that, you know, we would wish we had somebody when we're, you know, down, or we wish we had somebody that came up to us when we needed them. And, you know, some of us did have some people like that, and some of us didn't. And, you know, like Sunway, she had to rely on herself. And I think it's very commendable of her to, you know, take the initiative for herself to want to better her life. And sometimes it does come down to that. But I think that changing our mindset and being that person to help guide someone who is going astray in their lives can really, really help in many, many ways. Even just talking to them, saying hi, asking how their day was, simple things like that can really, really, you know, turn everything around. And so I think that's kind of the mindset that I try to go whenever I, you know, come across youth like that, because that used to be me. And I loved it when people would just say hi or would just compliment me or just say one nice thing about me. That's something that really, really turned around my day. And so that's the mindset that I try to keep in my head, and something that I encourage others to do as well, because it's not difficult to smile at somebody or say hi to somebody, and stuff like that really, really does make a difference.
Absolutely. Josiah, you have shared before how you've been able to overcome different things, and it was through connecting, like with the Phoenix Indian Center. You said, what if you were going to tell another youth, like who may be struggling, who doesn't see themselves as a leader, what would you tell them, to encourage them to, turn towards those, protective factors or those cultural teachings? What was it that helped you turn yourself around?
I think just having the opportunity to do so. I know a lot of kids, especially Native youth, don't have the opportunity to join a youth council or to better themselves by their peers around them. And I think it all starts with the community first. More so your home community, your internal family. And if you have a good internal family, you have a good start, I would say. And if you have a good community, you have even a greater start. And I think it all just starts to build from the family unit, and just trying to better your family is all I can really say. And that goes for friends and new people you meet, because they can be family as well. And second opportunities, you know, even telling other youth about the opportunity that you have so that they may pursue them as well. I know when I was at Mesa, anytime I would see a fellow Native student, people wouldn't think I'm Native just because we live in a highly cultural area, I guess. There's so many different races and nobody even thinks I'm Native. Back when I would go to Mesa High, so I would try to look for people and be like, hey, the Phoenix Indian Center is doing this. I actually have extra flyers if you want to check it out. I would just carry extra stuff on me just in case somebody wanted the opportunity. And I just think giving the opportunity to people is key, especially if they're trying to turn their life around or better themselves in any way.
Thank you so much. And you hit it right on the head, and it does matter who we surround ourselves with. And you said family, yeah, again, we have a list on the left of, these things lead to juvenile justice problems, but home, having a large family size, some of those things for natives, those are blessings and we know that we can find richness and socioeconomic disparities, but if somebody is going through some of these issues, you can find family in other ways. And that's what I love about Unity and what you've all shared about how, as a protective factor, even if these things are going on, we can encourage our Native youth to reach out and participate in family activities, whether that's your Unity family or your local community or even your high school. You can create family with the presence of a positive, trusted adult or an ally. And if there aren't any role models around, that's where we can step up and be a role model. It's never too late to be a role model. And once you start changing your ways and changing your mind, that is a form of intervention. It's not just prevention, that somebody's looking up to you and they're looking for that shared experience. So I love what you shared there, Josiah, because it is, providing a forum to discuss problems and issues, not only with themselves, but, one example, youth councils have even hosted like parent nights where it's a talking circle between parents and youth. And maybe it can talk about how do we heal our families? How do we have more positive parenting in our lives? And I know it sounds silly, but I used to teach parenting classes, and no, I'm not a parent myself, but it wasn't about me. It was about the parents having a meaningful conversation about discord in the home and how it has an effect on maybe the youth around them. So we'll move on to the next section. When it comes to peer-to-peer, you know, we hear a lot in the news about like gang violence or risky behaviors and like among other teens, and less exposure to positive opportunities like the ones that Josiah was talking about because of like rejection or bullying. But how do you, and I'll turn it back over to our panel, what do you say to youth who are seeking out to be surrounded by better peers? You know, sometimes we feel like we're surrounded by a negative situation, or maybe we don't have healthy relationships around us. What would you say to Native youth who are trying to find that positive role models and peers, like in clubs or sports or recreation? What would you say to them?
I can answer this question. I think from my own personal experience, I know that in high school, my friend group wasn't the most open-minded. And I think being kind of in that kind of environment made me not so much open-minded. And it wasn't until I started joining clubs and, you know, youth council that I saw that there are other people that are like me and that think like me, and I don't have to, you know, always be so negative about everything. You know, it helped me see the positive light in everything, you know, just being Native, and it just helped me, you know, see that maybe the group that I was hanging out with wasn't the right group for me, and it wasn't healthy for me to keep staying in that kind of setting. And so after high school, it was hard, but I did end up, you know, cutting ties with some of those relationships because they weren't benefiting me. If anything, they were dragging me down. And it is hard to do that. Like I said, for me, it was hard to walk away from that because they were people that I still considered, you know, close to me, but their ideals didn't line up with mine. And so, and once that kind of started affecting my own personal life, I decided it was time that I go my own way and I try to grow as a person in the direction that I wanted to. And sometimes it can be, you know, cutting people off, and, you know, that always is hard, but you have to know what's good for yourself. Is this benefiting me? Am I going to grow from this? Are these people really here to help me, or are they just here to drag me down? And there will be people like that in your life, and you will have to try to navigate through everything that, you know, they say to you, or ways that they show how they care, to see if they really are there with you to help you grow, or if they're not. And like I said, it's always going to be hard to try to make that decision, whether you want to keep them in your life or not. But that's kind of from my own experience, how I got to grow into the role and position and the person that I am in today. I really had to take a step back and look at, you know, the benefits of my friendships and relationships with the people that I had in my life.
And if I could piggyback off that, you know, there's this old saying that says, successful people hang out with other successful people. And I think that's really true. You know, and at the end of the day, we all have friends that we want to help and we want to get better. And sometimes you can only do so much for those people. And at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for yourself. But you never turn a blind eye to community, in my opinion. You're always there for them, but you make the smart choices yourself and you try to make them better as well. And I think along those lines, reconnecting with Mother Earth um, stepping away from, all the desensitized media that we receive in today's world. It really does good things for your mind. And I heard even stepping outside barefoot in the grass raises your brain waves by a lot, actually, and the activity in your brain is a lot higher. So just reconnecting with Mother Earth and finding those old teachings that that we used to say all the time, and just continuing those, I think, will really do wonders for your life.
I really love what you talked about, especially reconnecting culturally. To in our societies, we were organized in bands and clans and communities, and similar to how things happen today, we are close-knit communities, and we hear things and we know things about each other. But I think the difference is, using being there for each other in our community as a positive tool to reach out to somebody and really offer those cultural teachings that, like, hey, I may live in Phoenix, Arizona, but I can still go outside and feel the warmth of the sun. And maybe I'm not in my ceremonial homelands, but that I can still engage with our medicines in different ways. So the last section, and then I'll turn it back over to Sunwai. I'd really like to hear from Rebecca or Carrie or Shanoa or Jay. The next section really talks about community, like you're talking about. It can be positive that our school is in there, or our enrollment in schools. Delinquency is a real issue for Native youth, and they can be brilliant youth who are performing poor and academic for performance, and we see it time and time again, or low commitment to school, or not having future educational dreams, or having poor motivational um, aspiration in our school and our communities. How do we help Native youth to be forward thinking, to have goals for the future, to they talk about 7 generations, and when they're, and in a lot of our traditional prayers it talks about how you're blessing your life and it goes before you, and that you'll grow into old age. But I've been to detention centers where we ask people, what is your goal, 5-year goal, and they couldn't think that far ahead. He literally, one of the young men at the detention center literally told me, I don't expect to be alive that long. So how do we change this mindset, and how have we done it in our communities, or how have you seen it where youth are having their social and emotional needs and tying it into learning and being a productive citizen, not only of their school and their community, but maybe in a youth council setting, or even in a tribal setting, a community and a neighborhood that helps promote and foster healthy activities for Native youth. That can turn around a lot of poor motivation, or even high crime neighborhoods that may have social disorganization wherever the youth lives. So I'd like to turn it back over to we can't change our communities by ourselves, but we can help youth who may be living in a unhealthy atmosphere. How do we change that atmosphere, or how have you seen it done before?
Um, I think making change in a community would also have to do with holding yourself accountable. You know, um, all of these things where we contribute to ourselves, like I mentioned before, in our silence. Um, that's us not helping hold people or ourselves accountable for actions that hurt others. Our actions that are indirect towards us also have effect on a lot of situations and environments. And I've stressed this a lot, that a healthy environment contributes to a healthy mindset. And what you surround yourself with has to do with really how you feed yourself. The energy that you're surrounded by, nature or community or culture or just peers and friends in general, the relationships you have. Like Josiah said, successful people surround themselves with successful people. And that is 100% true only because a lot of people who continue to party or self-harm or continue to be in depressive episodes, they just want to be in self-loathing environments. They want to look for a reason to keep self-pitying and no longer take accountability for why they're in the situation they're in. And that has a lot to do with accepting grace. It has a lot to do with accepting humility. And it has a lot to do with just embracing experience. You know, you can't change what happens to you, but you can change the outcome of what you do with it. And that has a lot to do with how we hold people accountable. And holding people accountable isn't pointing a finger and telling them they did something wrong or telling them that this is what's supposed to happen. Holding people accountable has the most part to do with just pointing out challenges, accepting flaws, and really embracing the environment that you're surrounded in. Because once you do that in like a project mindset where you find a problem, address solution, and figure out the steps that go in between, it all has to do with addressing the problem first. The problem is what needs solution, and in those solutions, then you can find like better objectives, better mindsets, and better experiences. And I feel like the best way to change your environment is to really practice what you preach. And I like to do this by, I used to be super emotional, super vulnerable, and I still am, but I don't hold myself I don't hold myself towards expectations anymore. I don't try to withhold my tears, or I don't try to withhold my anger anymore. Like, I feel like instead of viewing emotionality as a weakness, I started to view it as a strength, because that is power. It's powerful to find yourself in vulnerable situations and still express yourself with clarity. And it's powerful to really understand the different tugs and pulls of emotions in positive and negative situations. You know, I'm one of those people who cried that movie because like I learned to see myself in a different perspective and live with empathy. And that's really what's powerful about effective communication and storytelling, is that you can help relay different messages across the whole audience and help influence the entire culture based on one idea. And that has a lot to do with our traditional storytelling, our oral traditions. We change the world by speaking it into existence. And you change the world in your environment by actually taking action or just holding yourself accountable to these ideas and different conceptions of what a different reality could be. You know, in tribal politics, it's really hard for us people to get our leaders to agree on the same thing, but that doesn't stop us from expressing our opinions at council meetings or expressing our opinions on Facebook. And like Josiah mentioned before, the desensitized society that we live in nowadays, it teaches youth to withhold their emotions, and it teaches youth to halt the healing process in traumatic situations. A lot of people on Reddit or Twitter or Instagram, they like to share their trauma stories and share their power of resilience towards an audience that they've never met, only because that's the only type of acknowledgement they'll get from anybody other than their family or than their peers. And there was a really interesting topic that was going on, trending on Twitter way back when the Me Too movement was going on, and everybody was sharing their stories of resiliency and rape and sexual assault. It was a form of trauma porn. And then that trauma porn, everybody likes to listen to a really sad story because that helps them realize that it could have been worse for them. And it helps them realize that they have a better off life than others who are sharing their story. And I feel like the best way to help influence a different community or influence your environment is to just really understand. And that's what brings us into our next slide. But if anybody else wants to help answer the question, I can go ahead and mute myself and listen.
Thank you so much. You know, you brought up so many really good points, and understanding what resilience is and not just jumping on the bandwagon of like, you know, when we tell people all the time when we're talking to youth about trauma is like you said, it's not a time to do like a laundry list of everything that's wrong with us, because we can get stuck in those cycles, like you said, Sunwai, but to focus on like the resilience that it builds, and that it's not an excuse, and it's not, you know, something that holds us back, but it's a strength and how we can build from that. And I see Carrie Brown unmuted yourself. You know, as an advisor perspective, you know, how have you been able to do that and change the atmosphere for youth in your community?
Hi, Lauren Ashley. Hi, guys. So as an advisor and a youth prevention worker previously, I am fortunate enough to be involved in the MDT for our area, which is a multidisciplinary team. And the name sounds a little bit more harsh than it is, but it's basically a support system for youth and how we can have a seat at that table to provide our input for our tribal youth so that they're getting the most benefit of being involved in any type of a system environment where they're getting care rather than more punitive actions on them. You know, let's find out what the source of the problem is and what are our solutions. What can we do to involve our tribal resources to be there for our youth? You know, we can open the doors for the youth councils. We can be very collaborative with the school system. We can provide workshops and activities and enrichment for our youth and bring our language program into our education system. So that way our youth see that we are present, we are there, we are here for you, and we will continue to be here for you. And I can't be everybody's mom. My parenting style is not the same as other parents. And I understand that. You know, I might, you know, I love my children, I'm supportive of my children, I'm involved with my children, as well as the other children throughout the community and anywhere I am needed. But at the same time, I have to understand that I may have a different parenting style or a different advisor style. And I respect that other people parent different than me. I respect that other people are there present in children's lives and they mean well. And so understanding that I am that person who is here for them in the way that I'm here for them, and you are there for people the way you are there for them. And just encouraging our youth to know that they have a voice at that table too. You know, if you are having trouble expressing that voice, come to me and I will help you share your voice. We're going to lift you up. We're going to help you, you know, be present at every event, volunteer, know that you're not just another community member who's there to be served, that you could serve your community too. And don't wait to be asked. Stand up and offer to help your elders or run a community event. You're just as amazing as every adult in the room, if not more.
Thank you so much, Carrie. And I think there's so many advisors in the world who have these experiences, and it is different with every youth and every community. But, you know, I wanted to close on this, that, you know, we have such resilience in us. And, you know, if you are talking to Native youth who, you know, may not see themselves as a leader yet, or maybe they're at the darkest parts of their lives right now and they have roads to choose on, you know, a good road with good medicine, or paths that we know might lead to, you know, consequences, you know, and not being on the good road. What is something that you would want to leave with youth today? We'll go around, you know, and each person can have their say. What would you like youth to walk away with today about changing their lives and changing the atmosphere and not letting the trauma you've experienced be the defining moment of your life? What would you say to other Native youth? And then we'll close with Sunwai, who will close this out on a couple of her slides.
In terms of closing or words of encouragement to youth, I'd say definitely having a good intention towards others. Sometimes it can be extremely difficult just to put yourself out there and talk to people. But it's good to, especially if you know what they've been through and you can actually walk them through it. So definitely not being afraid to be that one person that reaches out to the other one. Because some people just need one person. But in terms of intention too, I think people overlook that silent intention. You don't have to tell people, but you know, just pray for them. You don't need to tell anybody, not even your own family, but you know, pray for your youth, your family, your friends, yourself too. Because I think that's the biggest thing is everybody has their own battles. And often we never know of other people's battles. And it's not really a good or bad thing. It just depends on the situation. Because some people, they shouldn't hold on to it past the breaking point. And others, you know, they find their own methods. So it's just, you know, what is the word? Not being no, I don't know the word for it. Taking everything with a grain of salt, having the good intention, and taking that encouragement. Yeah.
I would like to say, just remembering teachings, remembering those before you had taught. Prayer is another big one for me. You know, for an example, every time I used to go to California with my dad or anybody, mainly my dad, he would always take some beach sand and say a prayer in Navajo, like sand in the ocean, and it would always rain when we came back. And ironically, it rained the other day when I came back. So I said a prayer at the beach, you know, remembered my teachings, and just not letting one thing go through your ear and out the next is all I'm trying to say. It's just, it's good to remember. It's good to keep doing right and having good intentions.
I think for me, I would like to say, you know your own self-worth, because you are a good person. If you're really trying to change your life and do stuff for the betterment of not only yourself, your community, you should know, you know, what you deserve. You know, surround yourself with good people, put yourself into good situations, because you know you are a good person and you deserve to have good things happen to you. So that's what I would like to say.
Shanoa, would you like to offer any words of encouragement to Native youth who may be struggling?
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid to reach out to somebody. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because it may not come naturally, you know, to you to recognize that like you do need help, but just know that like you're never alone in whatever situation that you're facing. Somebody is going through it or has already gone through it, and those are the best types of people to reach out to. And you know, like even like your friends, you know, you may not be always, you know, like sharing whatever's going on, but I bet you like, you know, they're understanding and they will help you even if they don't know like how, there's always people that are there to help you figure out the best ways to go about it. And I think that, you know, just like always keep an open mind, because you can find that source of encouragement, you can find that source of help in like the craziest of places, but you just have to keep an open mind. And like I said, like just don't be afraid to to even like try something new, because maybe that new thing is the thing that is going to help you.
Thank you so much. It's an open forum, so if you like to share anything, you know, it's important to ask these questions, the questions that, you know, sometimes may be hard, because you never know until you ask somebody what they've been through or what they learned or how they've learned it, resiliency to help them keep going. So with that, you know, Sunwai, I'll hand it back over to you to wrap us up with really understanding resilience and how that helps us as a community.
Thank you, Laura and Ashley. And I want to thank everybody who shared their comments tonight. You know, we all put up some really good points about knowing our self-worth and protecting ourselves, but also learning when to take those healthy risks and ask questions and learn not to be afraid to walk with humility. You know, that was my hardest part. That was my hardest part growing up, was learning to ask questions, because I didn't understand that everybody has experienced the same thing in some form or another. And it was really hard for me to go out and actually share my experience in order to learn from others' experiences. And in those similarities of shared trauma, I learned that resilience is more than being able to withstand yourself in difficult situations. Like on the slide that's presented before us, it says that under resilience, it forces us to fast forward through the healing process when we experience traumatic situations, pushing through those death-like moments, or pushing through when we lose a loved one, and or learning to stand back up after we fall down. It helps us from really understanding what we went through. You know, I remember there was a time where I found myself in a really ugly situation in where I had to cut somebody off out of my life. And I had to learn to let go of this person who was a family member for a temporary moment because of a situation that went down in the home. And whenever all of that happened, it happened in the matter of 20, 15 minutes. It all just happened so fast, where I learned that I wasn't right in the home anymore, or I had to go through some stuff. And it just really had me being strong in emotional situations, and I didn't allow myself to cry. And it was my resilience taking over, that resilience trait that was telling me that I needed to be strong and be there for myself and put up a face and not really show my true emotions of what was going on. And like before Rory left the call, he mentioned something about permanence. And in that permanent slide, he was talking about we deserve to thrive and survive because we are the survivors of those they couldn't kill. And now that all of these new situations are coming up with all of the boarding schools and the bodies announced in the last few days of investigating boarding schools, that is giving our power back. That's giving us the power back to cry. And in those emotional environments, in those emotional situations, it becomes powerful. And in situations that are into ourselves and individual conditions where we don't allow ourselves to cry, where we tell ourselves to be strong and not be angry and withhold, show up as reality. I feel like we're weakening our spirit by not being emotional. And in resilience, I see it as both a strength and a vulnerability. You know, we have to find power in our darkest situations. And in one of the slides, we have a picture of all the youth in an audience holding up their phones with their lights on in a moment of silence. And I feel like that's a really strong point to really focus on, is because we are finding power in dark situations where we lost a loved one, or we hold a moment of silence and say our prayers internally to say goodbye to somebody that was gone. And I feel like the next thing that we should be talking about would be is trauma. You know, our approaching our trauma through culture or holistic approaches that we do, and learning to persuade ourselves.
You broke up a little there, but I thank you for your words, and I thank you for your heart, and I thank you for bringing up these important points and why they're so important.
To accept what actually happened is pervasive too. You know, Rory also talks about being pervasive, and we have to learn that.
So I think she's having a couple of difficulties, but we get where her heart is, and we're so grateful for her talking about as a learning to be invasive, and exploring culture is not just the initiative of to learn your traditional practices, but like she was talking about and Sunwai was sharing, that these are tools, these are wellness tools, these are tools that our ancestors have given us to make sure that we can reach out to other Native youth and support them, and to see them as the light that they are in the community. We are really grateful that each and every one of you has joined us today, and we're going to do a closing. And I would just like each and every one of you moving forward to really think about how you are involving Native youth who may be struggling. We don't always want to just surround ourselves with the people who are performing at the top level, but we also want to reach out to those who maybe have the amazing potential to be a light to this world, but maybe struggling. And that's exactly what our program is all about. So the social, mental, physical, and spiritual well-being of our communities found through community service, and that there is a healing of trauma through service to others. And that's really what Unity is all about. So I thank you guys so much for joining us today. We will have another webinar that will be live from Houston, Texas next week on the 1st at 11 a.m. So if you're unable to join us in person at the national conference, we would like to invite you and everyone on the internet to come and join the peer guides as we talk about how do we take all these lessons that we've learned over the past 5 weeks and put them into a awareness campaign. How do you strengthen your physical self? How do you strengthen your well-being and move beyond trauma to address the strengths and the challenges within our communities as a change agent? And how do you do this by having open communication with, courageous conversations on topics that maybe aren't the easiest to talk about. So I thank everyone for joining us today, and we will see you again here live on Facebook, and then also live from Dallas, Texas at our National Unity Conference. Thank you guys for joining us, and I just thank you for your participation and your words. Everything you've shared has been from the heart, and I hope that it really empowers others to take that step and help empower Native youth to go beyond whatever trauma they're facing. So thank you guys. Have a great day. See you in Texas.